I recently turned 29 years old, and it wasn't lost on me how, in today's world, a person's your date of birth is such a significant part of your existence. You know, it's on your birth certificate, your ID, your passport, to the extent that we are individuals with dates attached to us, which is, I guess, a invention of colonial modernity, which prioritized like individual citizenship. But it also made me think about, for example, my grandparents or great grandparents who were born in a time when the need to know or to remember a person's exact date of birth was of very little significance, because they remembered and recorded birth differently. So before the need for, like these identity documents, which came at the time of colonialism, you can think of like the Kenya Kipande system, for purposes of surveillance or administrative control. So before that, how were their births remembered? So I guess my point of wanting to discuss this is twofold. On one hand, I'm interested in knowing, before, how did they celebrate a person's progression of life, without necessarily using birthdays, like without necessarily celebrating the date or marking an exact calendar year, like since a person was born, because they were more, event based, celebrating the events in a person's life, not just a calendar year. And then on the other hand, I'm also interested in how their births were remembered, if the exact date of birth was something that was of little consequence as compared to how it is now. So, if there's actually one thing I've learned from reading John Mbiti's writings in African religions and philosophy, which I have somewhere here. So, this is Mbiti's African religions and philosophy, where he says that he says that from the African communities that he surveyed, that time is event based. Basically, the way that people perceive time is based on events. The way people think about time, it is time to do something, it is time for something. And he also said that the way that people perceive time traditionally is in two dimensions. So the first dimension is Zamani, which is the infinite ocean of time. The in I find the exact quote, which is the Zamani is an infinite ocean of time where events are absorbed into an aspect of reality which is neither after nor before. So that is Zamani. It is the infinite ocean of time, within which we all exist. And then the second dimension is Sasa. Sasa is the more immediate dimension of time for an individual. It is the here and now within which we exist. So a person's Sasa starts from like the time they are born. So the older a person is, the longer your Sasa is. Your Sasa is just the here and now that you exist, the events that you experience that constitute the time that you get to experience. So a community also has its own Sasa, made up of the collective Sasa of its members. So um, if so anyway, the point is just that time is made up of events. So time is how we get to experience events. So before the need or to like celebrate birthdays or just arbitrarily marking another calendar year, it was the events in a person's life that propel that person into a new level or stage in life, or that allow you to enter society in a new way. But actually, this brings me to now thinking about my grandparents and my great grandparents, because how they progressed in life. The best way I can think about it is by thinking about something like age sets. I read Chino Achebe's Arrow of God, and there's an analogy in this book where I think I have it somewhere. Okay, I have it somewhere. So in this book, there are two villages, I think Omauro and Operi, which are at war. And in order to end the war, the district commissioner tells the people of the two villages to come together and break their guns, like literally break their guns in half in order to end the war. And it was such a big thing that the children who were born in that year, their age set was called breaking of the guns. So that is how their births were remembered. So an age set was a group of people who were born in a similar time and who go through life experiencing events together or at around the same time. So it could be like puberty, adolescence, work, education, marriage, rites of passage, and so on. So it was those events in a person's life that were celebrated because time is event based. You experience time because you experience events. And so this just helped me understand how their progression in life was marked, which to me is so beautiful because sometimes we celebrate birthdays like another calendar year, but we don't pay attention to our actual progression as people, our position in society, our identity, the events that are propelling us to new stages, because I think those are way more important, at least for me. I think those events in my life are way more important for me to actually understand and reflect on and celebrate, rather than just saying I'm experiencing time because the calendar says that a new year has passed. Which, yes, a new year has passed, but what are the events that have taken place that have made me experience time from, like, to distinguish where I am now to where I was before, if that makes sense. So I think that analogy just kind of helps me understand how time is event based. We are experiencing time because we are experiencing events. Yeah. And also, how were their births remembered? Like my great grandparents, how were their births remembered? Because birth was remembered based on context or the season of a person's birth. So, like, for example, in the analogy, the breaking of the guns, if someone born in that year was to ask when they were born, if they were to be asked when they were born, they would say, I was born during the breaking of the guns. And also, people's names had a lot to say about the context or about the time, the season that they were born, which is also, really nice. Rather than just to say, oh, I was born in this particular year or month or date, it's also nice to have an event that you can tie back to your birth. So I know, for example, I was born, I think, barely a week after Princess Diana died, which was such a big event during that time. So it was actually, like, for example, how my mom would remind me of my birthday, because that was the season or the event that was tied around my birth, which I think was really beautiful. I think I was born a week before Princess Diana died. So, but anyway, that was just the event that is tied to my birth, or that I used to remember my birth, just because it was a big event at the time. So yeah, I think my takeaway from all of this is that time is event based. So just like I said, I am experiencing time because I am experiencing events, and it is those events in my life that I am interested in reflecting on and noticing and celebrating. And also just the idea of time being event based, it means that, for example, there is no, whatever I think of as the past, that is actually just events that have happened. Whatever I think of is the present is actually just events that are happening. And whatever we think of as the future is just events which we are anticipating to happen. So there is no future waiting for us to get there, as in a future like an empty container of space or time that is waiting for us to get there. We produce time by experiencing events. Time does not exist independently of the events that constitute it, which is again something I learned from reading Mbiti's works. But yeah, let me just look at my notes just to see I haven't forgotten anything. But yeah, I think that's just what I wanted to talk about and just my reflection on my birthday. Time being event based and wanting to celebrate more the events in my life through which I am experiencing time, and also just reflecting on how our great grandparents, especially and those before them, remembered their births based on events, based on seasons, which I think is really beautiful and also tells us about our naming practices, because it is the seasons and events that give meaning to time. Yeah. But yeah, but I think that's a good note to end on. That events give meaning to time. Time isn't arbitrary, and we are not slaves to time. We are the masters of time. We produce time by experiencing events. But yeah, I think I'm going to end this there. Asante kwa kutazama, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.